Okay, hey everyone. Today is the 8th of January. It's a Saturday. Yes, I've got my hair cut, so yes, I look much different. Anyway, I thought I'd do a video today because the last video on the NPC generated so many comments. I don't know what we've got, hundreds. And there were a lot of interesting ideas that were being presented in the comments, enough that I thought, this is a good enough package for me to be able to do another video for you and kind of go to another layer, sharing some of the ideas with you and my ideas on those ideas. So that's what I'm going to do today, is put that out for you, and then get to some updating things at the end of this. So I'm going to go through what's there on the NPC ideas. I'm going to do it as an audio video now after this. Again, it just makes my uploads a lot quicker because I'm out here in the country. I don't have the fastest email system, or I don't have the fastest internet system. So yeah, we'll do this as audio from here on out. I thought you want to have a good laugh at the haircut, and yeah, we'll catch you here in a minute. Okay, so let's go and dig into some of the stuff that was on those comments about the NPCs, and I want to sort of address a couple of things. Again, this is a work in progress. I'm thinking this through as we go through. As you know, I don't interact too much directly in the comment section. I just leave that for you guys to converse with yourselves. But when I notice that comment conversations are kind of building in a certain way to something, then that's why I want to make a video and address the ideas and let you know that I am looking over the comment section. I just don't interact with it directly very much. The first thing I want to get clear about this is not an idea of trying to elevate oneself above others, trying to say that how different I am, how special I am, and anyone who's getting that idea is incorrect. What we're doing here is we're looking for truth of our reality. We're looking for the truth of our reality. And we're looking for honest exploration of the way things really are and to classify what we find in the material realm. No one would say it's wrong to be able to tell the difference between a tree and a rock and a giraffe and a dog, or to tell the difference between a border collie and a pit bull and a German shepherd and a whatever. We can say, yeah, they're all dogs, but they are different. There's different breeds there. And so I can say it's a dog generally. I can say it's a German shepherd dog. It's a collie dog. I can be very specific. It's a golden retriever. And that's all we're doing here. We're trying to, because if you're training a dog, as an example, this is a really good example. If you're training a dog, it makes a big difference what kind of dog you have to determine, in this case, how you train it. Different dogs require different kind of training. Different dogs require different kind of amounts of time when they walk, will require different kinds of food, will require different even types of play. Obviously, the ones that are like bloodhounds will be very different from the retriever, will be very different from they require different things. And that's really what we're doing here. We're looking at reality. We're attempting to understand reality in such a way that we can help classify something we've never had to thought to classify. Normally people grow up with, oh yeah, these are humans. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 1 nose, whatever. But each one, they'll all have a different level of intelligence, they'll have a different level of interest, they'll have a different level of whatever. The classification differences between people are very laid out. And almost no one can actually believe the possibility that there are completely different layers or types of things in human bodies walking around. And that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to see, is that true? And if we talked about this 30 years ago, if videos had existed, and most of you probably would have thought, you're kind of crazy. What are you talking about? Most people, but it's only been in the last few years, based on the clown show that's been going on around us, that more and more people have had to start asking questions of, hey, what's going on with the people in our reality? Something's not right with with the people around us. And again, I didn't like the term NPC. We'll see if we can come up with something else. We're starting with it there, but and it's important to realize that I'm not saying it has anything to do with someone with what they believe, or if they watch the news, if they don't watch the news, or this is something completely different. And there's two wonderings. I mean, I think everybody, including us, is in this NPC mode sometimes. I don't think there's no real difference, right, between an NPC and you per se. They need everything. Everyone who's in a human form needs the same things. Everyone needs food. Everyone needs water. Everyone needs air. Everyone needs affection. The only thing that seems to be missing about someone that I'm classifying as, and we don't use the name yet, in this different category, and particularly a category that's giant, is they're missing a deep introspection, at least at this particular stage in their life, and they've probably never had it. Does that mean it could show up at a later point in time? Perhaps. We have to keep that open. We don't know. But from what we can see, this deep introspection, this deep philosophical questioning of where are they? Why are they there? What's going on around them? Why is it going on? Why is the world the way it is? Those answers come from a very tight box. And that box is never changed, never messed with, never. It's like whatever they got when they were 5 years old, that's the box, and they're going to hold on to that for the rest of their life. That's the difference. That's the thing that seems to be at least missing in what we're moving into this NPC idea. And what's very interesting that I've really been thinking about for quite some time, once you begin to recognize this is not a one-shot only deal, this is not a one-shot only realm. We're either dealing with thousands of millions of parallel realities, or we're dealing with a system that's looping through time. So we're going through this experience many, many times. This particular second of reality is being replayed hundreds or millions of times, either in loops or parallel reality. So who's to say that someone we're labeling as I'm labeling, oh, that's a non-player character, that's someone who doesn't have this level of introspection right now, but that doesn't mean that in life number 8,642 that the divine spark has gone into that particular person and that didn't come into me. And this is something I've really started to contemplate, is that it's not just that that the soul is reincarnating into various bodies. I get the sense that in different times, this is just an idea now, but I get the sense that, say, whatever I can try to classify as individual, my divine spark, right? The deepest part of my soul that is from outside the matrix, the divine spark. That divine spark is if this reality, if we looped this and this reality started again, what I'm classifying and thinking is my divine spark won't necessarily go back into this particular body shell in that other realm. It might choose, and maybe it chooses one of 100, maybe 200. I don't know. But maybe mine will just go into a different, so I would then be the NPC. I would operate totally from my genetics, totally from my inherited ideas, totally from my upbringing, my parents, my conditioning, and that certain philosophical introspection that's been in some ways the core of my life won't be there in the other life. And maybe I would live that's when I see these when I get the what I'm calling parallel lives, when I get glimpses into the life where I'm a hockey player and I'm a comedian and I'm this and I'm that. Those lives are the lives where my personal divine spark wasn't in this particular body that I know of as me. My divine spark was in a different body. The me itself is not really that much different, but the me in that other life won't live that much different a life than this one, other than this introspective ability of trying to understand self and the universe and creation and death probably is missing, or is going to be at there's a particular level, there's a particular depth that it won't go. So it's also, again, when people are trying to say that, oh, you're trying to get people to elevate themselves over the others, this is a very important point, is that in another life of this, another equivalent life of this realm, where we're all here together at the same time, the one that I'm trying to label as an NPC now, that's the one that's got the divine spark. I would be the NPC in that life. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's not about trying to elevate anyone. It's trying to get an understanding classification system of what's going on in this realm, the experience that we're having. This is the most important thing, the experience that we are having right now, and getting to grips with how this reality is structured, how it's laid out, and why it's laid out that way, because it's very, very obvious that there is a difference. So that's the first thing I want to get across before I get into all the comment section. The second is that something that I didn't bring up in the other video is that I talked about, I'm thinking there's maybe 2 to 5% of what we see as human population as those right now showing, at least we'll say showing elements of a divine spark within, showing the elements of a non-blank stare when you give them philosophical questioning in a true way, that there's something really going on. Anywhere from 2 to 5%, even 1 to 5%. But that doesn't mean, let's say in this case, that the other remaining 97, 98% are all classified as non-player characters. I'm thinking what we're dealing with in that case, 96% are what we're classifying as these non-player characters. And this is also the hard one, or the challenging one for people to get. And this is something that the Good Place show is helping to reveal. As much as I dislike the program, it is revealing that, like, say 1%, maybe less than 1%, are archonic beings, are demons in disguise. That's what they are. So we've also got this bizarre thing of where you've got the humans that are here. And so you say, well, why would they want so many humans that are in this non-player character mode? And again, I don't like people say, oh, they're just background, they're filler. They're not background, they're not filler. They themselves are still generating loosh. Okay, you have to understand. Just because soul, let's say my soul A, let's call it A for a letter, and it's got 30 different or 100 different bodies it could go into in any particular life that it comes into this realm. Just because it has chosen this one, the one that's talking to you, and not the other 99, doesn't mean the other 99 possible choices are now just background extras. No, they're still characters that are going to live their life, that have an energy system and are still generating loosh, are still generating energy for the whole realm. And something that the Greek woman in Can You Stand the Truth has been very clear, I'll say her name properly, Angelika Agnostou. There's lots of things that, again, I dislike about her book, and I'll get to the stuff about animals and a few things in a minute. But I do appreciate this idea that she calls skeptomorphic creations, which are human thought projections that live in the astral realm. And that when we put enough thought and focus on particular things, we're almost creating like a tulpa. But a tulpa is in sort of shamanic terms, a tulpa is a thought projection that you make manifest, a thought projection that actually becomes a physical thing in reality, as opposed to what she calls a skeptomorph, which is a thought projection that becomes real, but only in the astral realm. But in the astral realm, that thought creation is needing energy to keep it alive, particularly the energy of the thoughts that created it in the first place. Like, you can't just have one thought and create a skeptomorphic being. You've had to have some fairly steady thoughts, desires, concept, whatever. Like, something has had to keep your mind churning for a while. And after a certain amount of time, you'll have put enough energy into this thought pattern that it will project an actual thing in the astral realm. And to her, this is one of the reasons for the massive growth of population, is that not just are the archons in the system pulling loose, the way it's been set up. And in fact, the archons are quite upset with us because we've created all these skeptomorphic beings. Some of them are from the negative stuff we thought, some are from the positive stuff we thought. It doesn't matter. They've created a second layer of energy sucking devices that are looking for energy to suck out. And so therefore, we may have seen a material realm. One of the resets we may have gone through was simply to start getting more potential human bodies here. Not so much that, it might have been simple before. You had 400 million souls, you had 400 million people. Fine, one soul to one person. But we needed to get more bodies because we needed to get more energy being generated, not so much for the system, but for the skeptomorphs, for these thought projections that we have manifested in the astral realms that are sucking as much energy from us as the archons and the Lush are sucking from us. The archons and the demiurge are sucking from us. So I'm just bringing all that up because we're trying to, again, get an understanding of what we're dealing with here. Why are we dealing with a 98 potential, 98, even 99% human forms that seem to be missing this one little piece that others of us seem to recognize as being different, recognize as they're being missing. And again, we're trying to label this in such a way that we can understand it, work with it, not elevate ourselves over anyone, but recognizing we're absolutely equal, other than in this particular life, a divine spark chose to be in person 1 and not person 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. That's all. And what does that mean? What's the difference? And more importantly, how do we interact? Because you can say, well, it doesn't matter. It kind of does, because just the same way as if I'm out in the forest and I come across a hungry grizzly bear or a hungry lion, I'm going to interact with that very differently than if I come across a hungry deer. If I just classify hungry animal and my response will always be the same, then that's not accurately assessing the situation from the standpoint of the material realm. The hungry grizzly bear will require a different response than the hungry deer. That's common sense, right? So dealing with what we might call someone in divine spark mode, someone in, I think they've got the divine spark, but it hasn't fully been activated. We've got somebody who doesn't seem to have a divine spark right now, but maybe they might. Or we got someone who's obviously not a divine spark and doesn't look like it's ever going to happen. We've got somebody, I think that's a demon in disguise. You should interact with each one of them very, very differently. And that's the point of making this particular video. Sorry, it's taken a long time to get to this, just the point of my making this video, but to me, that's why this is important. Now, I've talked about the demons in disguise, and this is going to be a huge part of the upcoming research in the upcoming book, but to me, what they're here to do is to make sure that humans, and it could be the NPCs themselves, but more or less the ones with the divine spark, because the ones with the divine spark have a different energy power within. And they're there to create situations, to manipulate situations, to manipulate the minds of these divine spark people, to create additional chaos. The world itself is generated to create chaos. But if you start to look carefully into your past, I think if you're honest, you will notice situations that were manipulated from the outside. And it's not necessarily even manipulating you personally. You can feel that your mind was manipulated, or you were pushed into decisions that were not good for you and did them anyway. But you could also notice that you think someone external to you. Have you ever had those situations where someone you know really well, a friend, a family member, all of a sudden one day acts for 10 minutes in the most bizarre fashion, speaks to you in an unbelievable way, acts in a way that just generates in that 10 minutes chaos, and maybe even chaos or problems or difficulty that lasts for weeks or months or years. in the interaction, and never again would you ever see that behavior. And in fact, if you try to bring it up, they'll deny that they even ever acted that way or said this stuff. And could you see that that could have been a time that they were influenced by these, we'll call them demons in disguise, to interact with us in a way when we're not aware, has a huge effect on us. And this is another point of the whole reason of going through this entire discussion. And that is that it's designed to also up our awareness, to get a better understanding of what we're dealing with here on a moment by moment basis in this realm, and who and what we are dealing with at any moment of time, so that we don't let our awareness slip. If our awareness slips, if we are, you might say, if we move into an NPC kind of zombie-like state, then we're not going to be able to act in the moment as needed to block what needs to be blocked, avoid what needs to be avoided, move towards what needs to be moved towards. We will wind up potentially in the scenario that's being manipulated and orchestrated around us. Does that make sense? I can also see that from looking into my past, that there were times when I think things were being orchestrated around me, but my awareness was high enough that I was able to sidestep them. I was able to ignore them. Other times, my awareness wasn't high enough, and I walked, you might say, right into the trap. And this is all part of this discussion, which is, and that's why I'm doing it today. And yes, I haven't got to any of the comments yet. I will now, but I wanted to lay out some background first. So I guess this is going to be a longer video today, but I think based on the comments, I think it's worth it. And it's worth it for us to discuss this and understand why we're discussing it, so that we don't think that we are creating a hierarchy of specialness. We're creating a more clear understanding of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Okay, let's start getting to some of your comments. Now, one comment that I noticed came up a lot was how many people were saying, oh, my husband or my wife, they're an NPC. First of all, that's a dangerous line of investigation. It doesn't mean you shouldn't investigate it. But it's also interesting as to, first of all, why truly are you saying that? So, and it shouldn't just be because they're not like me, right? Because we can't use ourselves as the benchmark to determine how everyone else's behavior should be or shouldn't be. So it's very important first to really determine what's going to be your mechanism on somebody that you're spending. It could be the same thing. My boss is an NPC. You're with them 5 days a week. So anyone that you're around a lot, like, it's totally different. If it's somebody you think, I think the person who gives me my coffee at the coffee house is an NPC. Yeah, you see them like 5 minutes a week. It's not a big deal. But when you're seeing somebody potentially hours, day after day after day, the line of investigating before you make such a decision has to be very clear. So you need to come up with the testing scenario before you even go into making a statement like that. Just starting there. Okay, one person, I guess it's Summer, I think, suggested that that they were looking at their photo albums, and they were trying to determine from looking at the photos, can you tell who has a divine spark or doesn't have a divine spark from the photo? And that's interesting. I haven't done that yet. I haven't tried to check, and I would think you can get a sense of the energy structure, because I've seen auras in pictures. I mean, I've actually seen energy bodies and things from looking at photographs. So I don't know if you could see certain things in, and that's another thing, is even the aura itself. Like, if you can see auras, well, I used to, like 20 years ago. I've stopped kind of doing it over time, but is there a difference? Are there certain people that the aura looks a particular way? Other people it looks different at all? Some have suggested that some don't have auras at all, which doesn't make sense to me, because there should be an etheric body no matter what. So, but it's an interesting idea. Sonnen had made a comment about different kinds of NPCs, and this is also very interesting. That yes, it shouldn't all be a one size fits all kind of thing, right? And this person called what they called a superstar NPC, which seems to have it all, get it all. Success comes very easy. They're very popular. However, there's nothing behind the facade. And that is interesting, right? That's interesting as to many who move up the chain very quickly do seem to be ones who seem to be very blank, very, it's almost like a lot of those, and we can think about this in the standpoint of celebrities. This is a very easy one. The celebrity often seems to be very, very wooden, right? Wooden's a really good word for them. The Pinocchio story, right? Very wooden. So just because someone is gaining some kind of success or some kind of focus or some kind of attention doesn't mean there's any depth to them. And that's and it's interesting that there could be a number of things laid out to create this kind of carrot chasing for the regular divine spark. Oh, I need to be a celebrity. I need to be important. And so wasting our energy, again, chasing useless material titles, chasing useless material importance, chasing useless things within this reality, because this is another example of the distractions in reality. One of the things this realm does very, very good is distract everyone. And there's so many layers of distraction that, there's 100 different layers. All that matters is it catches you on one or two. It doesn't need us to catch us on 90. It needs to catch us on a couple. And if it can get us distracted in those areas, sucks our energy into the realm, gets what it needs. Somebody, Esoteric Veritas, had mentioned that in the Gnostic tradition, that they claim that there are three types of humans. One was the total knowing person. I think that was called a mnemonic. A second one was known as psychic. They were not truly aware, but not unaware. And then there was what the simple like called a vessel, and that was known as a hillock. And you can go look this up on various areas of the internet if you want. I'm not going to go into too much detail. But the hillock, they're also called somatics. And that's right from the Gnostic texts. And somatics are believed completely bound to matter, that they're bound to the material world. Of course, the material world being created simply by the demiurge. That as soon as you are totally bound to it without having a spiritual element to you, that they're called somatics. And it's very interesting too when you think that in Brave New World, the drug that Huxley had given to all of the residents of Brave New World was known as soma, to help make them somatics. And if you want to look into some of this detail more clearly in the Gnostic tradition, you can read the Gospel of Judas, which is very, very interesting, where Jesus is discussing himself as a pneumatic, as somebody who is at a higher order, and discussing not just people but his disciples, and showing that most of his disciples are actually somatics, and that they're still attached to the material world, and it's showing that Judas is being presented very differently in modern, or since then, in the way the New Testament is presented and written, as opposed to what's really going on. So it's also an interesting text. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but I'm just leaving it there, that it is something you can look into. This is another one here. Another person, Pellenreller, had mentioned that there's often NPCs that can be detected through their level of success, somewhat unrealistically successful with no real reason to do so. It's like they've been programmed to just be born winners. And then, of course, there will be NPCs that will be programmed to fail constantly. So it's also, there seems to be some, and again, this is programming, right? We're all dealing with programming. Everyone, no matter what the label is you want to try to place on people out there, we're all dealing with our own conditioning and programming. Now, it just seems like the more, what's the word I'm going to need? The more hillock, the more somatic a person actually is, the more the programming will always click in, right? That's a good way of describing it. The programming always kicks in. Well, it seems that those are going through a true soul journey one way or another are going against the program many times. And going against the program sometimes makes life very difficult. But that's a part of the process of breaking the bonds to divine of the divine to matter. A number of people are asking about animals and the connection with humans and the divine spark. I can say that, at least in my opinion, and not just animals can have a divine spark, and I think most of them do. But so trees and rocks and everything, grass. We just don't notice it, of course. We can't tell the difference between one blade of grass and another. It's a little easier with a tree, but there are definitely trees that I can go in the forest and spend time with, and they're just perfect. They're wooden. It's a perfect example. They're wooden. And there are other trees that are not. There's other trees that are literally different than a tree. They are bursting with something else, some other intelligence, some other, and the other tree right next to it, and they don't necessarily look any different, but one tree is completely different to another. And we'll find this with animals too, right? I mean, animals have a general tendency of how they function here. And yes, they're very much involved with instinct. They're very much involved with a quite, in many cases, barbaric life. It's being an animal in the wild is very, very difficult, particularly when you live in a place like I do in the north part of Europe. It's in the wintertime, it's tough to be an animal. It's hard to find food. It's cold. It's difficult to deal with shelter. It's hard to move. It's not an easy existence at all. But at the same time, animals tend to have this unbelievable, even though through all the brutality, there's an unbelievable gentleness that's there. And depending if somehow that can be fostered and can be, and almost doesn't matter what the animal is, that extreme gentleness and kindness can all of a sudden raise its, particularly if it gets to a point where it's no longer needing to hunt and deal with food and shelter. Once it gets that covered, it seems to can change its behavior massively. So that's one thing I disagree with the Greek woman's book about completely. She tries to place humans, all humans, above animals. Humans are, to her, divine souls, or what she called them, neutral souls. The other ones are neutral souls, and the others are divine souls. But animals are part of just the realm. They're part of, and this is not the way the Cathars saw it. The Cathars, one of the reason they didn't eat animals, at least in the way they described it, is because it's usually presented as, well, animals were conceived and brought into the world through a sexual process, and they didn't want to eat anything that went through a sexual process. They would only eat, they thought fish didn't go through a sexual process, so that's why they could eat them. And I guess in their mind, they thought, if any creature goes through an actual sexual process in this realm, it's something that a divine spark can choose to come into. So, in a sense, in that thinking, my divine spark could just as easily go into this human body, another human body, a giraffe, an elephant, a dog, a cow, whatever. So for that was the reason they didn't want to eat animals, is because they didn't want to potentially be killing and eating another creature that could have the same divine spark as they did. And so, and I would definitely, of course, from my own experience, say that in many cases, some of the animals I've known are on another level to humans. Like, it's quite possible that even without a divine spark, the animals are much wiser than even the most wisest of humans. So, just my opinion on it. I don't see it the way others see it in those regards. One person here discussed the NPC connection between people and their inner dialogue. I don't know. I would assume, though, inner dialogue exists for all humans. That's just like eating. It's like this. So I don't think there's anything different. I just think the inner dialogue will be more willing to question by those we're classifying as those with a spark. That's all. One person said, "Isn't this just ways of explaining different levels of consciousness?" And no, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case because first of all, what are you labeling consciousness? How are you defining consciousness? And more importantly, it seems like, and again, we can only deal with the experiences that we have in this particular realm that we're interacting with now. And in this realm, it doesn't seem like someone that I'm classifying as that it's not a level of consciousness, that it seems like it's not like you could sit them down and take them to school and teach them over the course of 5 years a whole lot of mystical, philosophical knowledge to put truth. It seems like that's not going to work very well. They're just going to block that. And if it was just a consciousness thing, then all you'd have to do is get through the blocking mechanism, the wall mechanism that's there, and literally you would turn that switch on. And the feeling I get is that no matter what you do, the switch won't turn on. And this is one of the reasons we're having this discussion, is to learn this, because if that's true, then attempting to awaken these sleeping NPCs is a giant waste of your time, because it's not going to happen. This is not the type of lifetime where the awakening function doesn't fit there. There are certain levels of understanding that can happen, certain realizations that will happen just generally. But there's a point. And if you're forcibly trying to get someone past the point they can't go through, that's a waste of your time and energy, which is, again, what this realm would want you to do: waste your time and energy. So it's important to get to the bottom of this so we know what to do and what not to do with those we are around, right? Someone asked here, Greedy asked, do you think non-player characters experience true free will? And I'm not sure anyone experiences true free will. This is the problem, right? Because if something is being done, if you do any action based on conditioning and programming and genetics, well, that's not free will. Free will would be classified as the ability in any current moment to act absolutely independently, to literally do any of a billion choices right now. And the fact that already we would be limited by genetics, by at least it's a belief of genetics, the belief of the programming, the belief of the conditioning, to even think that there's levels that we can go to, or things that we can do and things we can't do. That's not free will. So we already have to start changing that concept in a gigantic way. People, this is one that bothers me so often now. I hear all over YouTube on videos, well, we're all co-creators and we need to focus on our co-creating abilities. That's one of the reasons we got stuck in the trap in the first place. The sucking mechanism to think, come in here and create whatever you want. Great, I'm going to become a creator and create whatever I want, not knowing that all the things we're going to create are going to be another level into the trap. So whenever I hear that now, all the we are co-creators, yeah, good. Keep that going. Keep enjoying your time trapped in the reincarnation cycle, because you're not getting out with that kind of thinking. So I don't know. Maybe that's anyway. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to leave it at that. That can become discussion at another point. Another person here asked, Yarkov asked, what do you think of Solipsism? Well, there's many layers to Solipsism, but it believes that you're the only player, or you're the only actual living person, the only living thing, and the entire simulation is built for you, kind of like the Truman Show, where Truman Show is an example of Solipsism, where Truman Burbank is the only real thing in the production, and everything else is fake. I get the idea, but the old myths are very clear. And some of the old mythology is one of the most important things I think we have into trying to understand our reality. And the old myths are very clear that many soul beings were lured from heaven, not just one. I get the sense it's limited. It would also be a heck of a lot of work to create simulations just for one individual soul. That's a tremendous amount of work. It makes more sense to limit what you're doing, cut the programming, cut the, cut the possibilities from at any moment from 1 billion to a couple hundred, and cut down the programming power, cut down the speed, but to just, I think that's a dangerous it's a dangerous way forward. And maybe, who knows, maybe it's true, right? Maybe there's only one actual real thing in the whole universe and everything else is just illusion, and whatever you think you are is it. I know that's a very Advaita type of concept, but it can also be a way that can lead you, if you don't handle that philosophy well, to put you into some very dangerous areas of action and areas of belief. And I think it's better to put that on. Let's leave it on the table. Like, don't take it off the table, because you can't disprove it either, right? It can't be disproved instantaneously. So you have to leave it on the table. But to proceed with that as your main driving philosophy going forward, I think would lead to more issues than not. Let's see. Gnostic Gospels again. I'm just going to pause for a second. Yeah, it's just come up in one of the comments, this idea that the whole world is devolving, that we're not evolving in any way, shape, or form. The animal kingdom has seemed to evolve. It has seemed to create more and more things that help it fit into the environment. While humans seem over time to create more and more things about ourselves that make us totally separate from reality, and make it harder and harder for us to even live without certain external technological things to keep us going. I mean, we just don't fit in here, right? I've talked about this in another video. We just literally don't fit in here at all. We don't. Compared to every other animal in this place, we just don't belong here. And from the standpoint of things improving, things continually get worse. It doesn't matter what it is: television, movies, music, education systems, the medical, everything is getting worse. If you go back and talk to people who are still alive in the 1950s, for example, and ask them, what were the hospitals like? What was it like? What were doctors? The doctors, I think, still made house calls even in the 1950s, right? What was school like in the 1950s? What was it like to go to a concert in the 1950s? Anything. It doesn't matter. I'm just using that as an example, but the further back you can go, almost, you can get, like, things are nowhere near better now than they were then. Yeah, things change over decades a little bit, but we've just gone off the cliff. And the further back you go in time, it seems like things were, on some levels, better and better. That doesn't mean it was there to help us. And this is something that my Power of Then book, I'm really concerned about. I'm actually thinking of stopping the sale of the book now, from all the bookstores, because there's so much in the book I don't agree with anymore. I still had this idea that those in the past were advanced knowledge, which is possibly true, but that it was all good. It was all positive. We lost all of this positive stuff, and now we're in all this negative stuff. And I'm really not sure about that at all. That there may have had to be a time so far in the past that we have almost no recollection of it, and what we think of as archaeological history is just a whole part of the original trapping mechanism. So I'm not really sure where I'm at yet. Let's see. Looking for the next comment here. And again, there's still many of these comments that are trying to say that I'm, even though I'm trying to say I'm not trying to elevate anyone above or below what's been called an NPC. By stating that you're doing that, you are placing them on a level below. And not at all, because again, we are on one giant level, we're all equal. And that is, the body has just been manifested for energy loosh production. That's it. We are here to generate loosh to keep the system going. It just happens that certain divine sparks go into certain bodies in this particular life. And again, if this gets re-looped and the divine spark that I know of as me doesn't exit the matrix on this round and comes back into this particular cycle again, this divine spark may not be in this body next time. It's in a different body. In someone that you think, oh, I'm belittling by calling them an NPC, well, it'll be the opposite. This body will be the NPC and the other one will have the divine spark and will have the possibility of whatever. So it's not me, the physical thing, the thing that's sitting here talking to you. This has nothing to do with what will escape the matrix. And this is, again, a major mistake that everyone makes. They think that the thing they look at in the mirror, the thing that they think of as themselves, the material aspect of themselves, the thought process of themselves, the experience process of themselves, the memory process of themselves, the energy process of themselves, that any of that exits the matrix. No, it's the divine spark part of the soul, which is actually separated from the soul is actually left behind. The soul will not escape the matrix. The soul has to be the original division entering into through the tree of good and evil, right? Is the fusing together of divine spark and energy. That's the first drop into the world of the demiurge, into this simulation. And it's the divine spark that leaves, or you might say it's truth that leaves. Everything else has to be left behind. So as long as someone is trying to get their individualized anything out of the matrix, will fail. Anyone, and I love people who will say, whatever, they'll talk about exiting the matrix or something, oh yeah, I've exited the matrix. I've learned all about this and I've learned about that. I've listened to Donald Trump and I'm out of the matrix now. You're in a material body, so no, you're in the matrix. If you're in an etheric body, you're in the matrix. If you're an astral body, you're in the matrix. If you're in any of the many layers of the many parts of this entire simulation, you're not out of it. And so again, here's a good term. So let's not use NPCs anymore. Let's use PSV, Possible Soul Vehicles. That's what I'm going to call them from now on. Possible Soul Vehicles. That's a great word because it means that, because we don't know for sure. So it could mean that they might get a soul while they're in their lifetime. Okay, we say, well, they don't have one now. They don't have the divine spark now, but they might get one. We don't know how it operates. It might just show up tomorrow. We don't know. Or at the very least, like I was saying, when the next life goes through, if this life reloops or in other realities, they've got the divine spark and I don't. I like that. Possible soul vehicles. And that they're all of us are just here, energy loosh production. And if we're dealing now with all of these thought form skeptomorphic aspects who are draining even more energy from us, they need more bodies. That's all. They just need more bodies to upkeep the energy requirements, and they just don't have enough souls to go around. So you have to just keep transferring the souls from here to there to here to there. Just keep it mixed up every so often. But the point is that when you start to see what we're really here for on a manifested form, right, which is live, give up our energy, have reproductive sex so that we can produce more kids, so that produces more energy, loosh production, slaves, more potential places for the divine spark to go, more places for the skeptomorphic energy to be drained off. Then the material realm makes sense. It makes complete sense. I'm simplifying, but it makes complete sense. And we can begin getting an understanding of what we need to do to no longer be a part of that. Oh yeah, I have a whole thing on this line that they're building in Saudi Arabia. That's a whole nother story we have to get through. Man, that's bizarre. I just had it in my notes here. Okay, I'll get to the end of this because I've been talking long enough. Let's just see. Again, there's somebody who kind of says, this is great that you're talking about this. It's controversial because our fellow human beings are involved, but it needs to be discussed because there are misunderstandings between people, and these misunderstandings need to be understood. Yeah, Calendra Razor. So I think I agree. That's partially why I'm trying to do that. And again, it's those that were what I call possible soul vehicles, PSVs. Possible soul vehicles is the focus is only on the material, and the focus is on the conditioning, it's on the genetic material, it's on what you might call the wavelength frequency that's sent out, that this is what you're supposed to believe, this is what you're supposed to think, this is how you're supposed to act, this is what you're supposed to do. Don't ask questions, don't think about it. Just be in very good automatic reaction mode. Do what you're told mode, so to speak. That's a really good example of what we're dealing with. And one thing I've learned is that if the majority tends to say or to present anything of that if the majority says this is true, if the majority is saying this is what you should do, if the majority is saying this is what you believe, I'm almost right away saying that then I'm going to believe the opposite. Because if the majority believes that A is true, probably more likely B is true. Of course, that doesn't mean B is probably true either, but it's obviously probably C, but you have a better chance of getting anywhere if you just if everyone believes this, if everyone's doing this, if everyone's operating this way, you want to do the exact opposite, because the more you just blend. I mean, there's one thing when you fake it, you blend in with the masses. Like if the whole population wears a blue shirt, well, if you wear an orange shirt, you're going to stand out. And the whole population's going to see you now, unless you really want to be seen and noticed. Okay, but it's also valuable to say, I'm going to wear a blue shirt because I'm going to navigate and not be noticed, but I have no interest in a blue shirt. I think blue shirts are stupid. And in fact, I'm not going to believe that there's anything positive in it whatsoever. And as soon as there's no one around, I'll take the blue shirt off, because you're not going to go along with what the masses believe, but you're also going to find ways as needed to navigate without losing what you might feel is your core essence, right? There's certain things in the last 3 years that I just won't do. I just won't do it no matter what. It has nothing to do with trying to, because obviously I'll stand out. I'm not blending in, you might say, in that I become quite noticeable. But there's certain things that, to me, if I do this particular action or think this particular way, I feel like that's actually would lead to soul loss. And since the whole purpose here is, for me, is strengthening the soul, understanding what makes it up, and allowing that soul to eventually do its final breaking apart, its splitting, and the divine spark can leave and return home. Nothing that's going to I'm not going to do anything to myself that injures that process. So there's certain things that I just won't do. On the other side of it, it's this understanding of knowing that there's a frequency, knowing that there's a download, and there always has been. I'm sure if we went back 1,000 years, there'd be a download that the average person around would be running on. And normally that's going to be always helping the system. That's helping the matrix. That's helping this reality. It's not helping the understanding of it and the escape from it. So whatever the masses believe or are told to believe or pretend to believe, our focus should be, okay, well, what's the opposite? I'm going to look into that. Right? It's like one of those Castaneda things where he had mentioned it's not so important to keep reading books on subjects that you like. It's more important at times to read books on subjects or areas that you don't like. Go and read the things you don't normally read, because that's where you might have opportunities to break something that's your normal box of beliefs and understanding by reading something completely different. Last one, I guess that's it. I guess that's good enough for now. I'll stop talking there. That's what came out of going over your comments, thinking about them. Like I say, I just copied and pasted some into a document and then have talked about it here. So we'll see what any of you think about what I've just said, if any of it triggers more information, understanding, ideas. right? It's not about, again, we're not about trying to belittle. We're not trying to raise ourselves above. We're not trying to make anyone special or not special. We're trying to recognize what's in our reality. It's good to know the difference between a tree and a rock. It's good to know the difference if we want to have maple syrup for dinner. It's good to know the difference between a maple tree and an oak tree and a pine tree, because we can tap the pine tree and the oak tree as long as we want. We're not going to get the sap we need to make the maple syrup. So we need some classification of what we're dealing with so we know how to operate and how not to operate in what we experience in our world. That's why we're doing this. And I now like this term, possible soul vehicles. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So from now on, I'm sorry it took over 40 minutes to come up with that term for you, but PSV, that's going to be the term I'm going to use from now on. I don't know what I'll say for the divine. I don't want to use the word humans at all, because to me, that word is going, from now on, I'm going to use that word to mean, when I say that, to mean anyone in a human meat suit, that they are human. If we start classifying, we've got PSVs, and then we've got, I don't know, DSP something, Divine Spark. I don't know. We'll come up with a different word. PSV. Okay. I recently did an interview this week on Thursday with Dr. Tom Cowan. You probably know him from the Contagion Myth book that he put out, and his stuff in questioning science. That interview is all about the fairs, but he's really liked my material. He's liked the books, and he wants to go and go into deeper subjects, which I think is going to be a very interesting progression. I really like him. Really nice guy. I've read his, watched his stuff and read his stuff over the last few years, and so it's not out yet. Once it is, I'll have it up on the interviews page, and of course let you know when it's up in one of the future videos. And then I've got another big series of videos coming, some of which are interviews coming, which are, some are going to be very interesting. They're not going to be standard interviews like I've done. They're going to be, in fact, they're going to be quite challenging, I think. There's a couple I'm actually preparing for, because I know what the audience is going to be. It's going to be very different than an audience getting interested in soul traps and reincarnation and how do I get out of this and how do I stop. I'm going to be talking to groups that don't think like that at all. I'm going to be talking to an audience that has a completely different idea. And I'm going to have to learn, I'm starting to learn the process of presenting the material for those interviews in the way that's going to hopefully have the best possibility of getting questioning and thought production, and not in any way, suggesting anyone believe what I believe, right? That's a way for all of us to go through, particularly if you're talking to people that you know on this subject, people you want to share this subject with others. It's also, and this is a good understanding of getting to know what we call now PSVs, getting to know how the PSV operates, how the PSV thinks. So if you're going to present an idea like, say, soul traps, Gnostic demiurge ideas, well, what's the best package? What's the best presentation if you're sharing that with someone who's not in our community, who's not already moving in this direction? If you're going to share it with someone outside this community, what's the best way to do that so that you could actually encourage a discussion or a thought, or somebody comes back to you in a couple of weeks and maybe says, yeah, I've been thinking about that, and well, I kind of can see this, but this looks kind of goofy, and where you're not just going to be met instantaneously by a brick wall, not so much even on the material, but the way you've packaged and presented the material in that situation. So it's something I'm thinking about. It's something for those of you to think about, that if you're talking with family and friends about these subjects, what's a good package to how to share it? That can be another video we could make, and I could go through the comments. Don't put those comments here. I think that could actually be a video. After I've done a couple of these interviews in a couple of weeks, I can put that video up and share some of the ways I tried to package the message. And then it could be interesting to hear your suggestions on packaging the message to those you feel you want to share it with, but who will give you instantaneous brick wall as soon as you even attempt to discuss it. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody, for following the channel, for the support, for purchasing the books. And of course, that's always helpful to an author and a researcher to buy their books. And even though I don't make a tremendous amount from each one of the sales, it helps. It adds up, and over time, with enough people buying them, it's great for me, and it's great for getting what I think is valuable information into other people's hands, and so you can read it. And so thanks for doing that. Thanks for commenting on videos. As you see, I won't respond directly, but I keep track of them. And when I feel I've got a bulk of enough things on a particular topic, then it can become another video for all of you. So thanks for doing that. And just for doing your own thing out there, digging into research, digging into ideas, trying to come up with an answer to this question of what is this place that is the right understanding and the right solution for you. So we'll see you in a while. We'll be interested what the comments turn on this one. Cheers, everyone.